January 19th meeting. If you'll please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Tonight we're going to start with our Board of Finance meeting. Mr. James.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay, so Indiana code requires all governmental units to hold an annual Board of Finance meeting in January. And in essence, this is to kind of summarize the financial activity of the particular governmental unit, be it the counties, cities, towns, us at the schools. So Indiana code has some specific things that we need to talk about. And in your board packet, we have an agenda that we'll go through for the Board of Finance meeting. So the first thing we need to do is elect a president for this Board of Finance meeting.
I'd like to make a motion, Madam President, to nominate you, Cindy Suze, as president of the Board of Finance.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion that nominations are closed.
I'll second that.
Now we vote.
All for a vote on the first nomination?
Nominations are closed. Nominations,
Excuse me, Dr. Medlin has seconded it.
nominations are closed, right? I move for them to be closed. Sandy seconded that. So we have one nomination, and that's Cindy. Okay. So we're voting on Cindy. You going to call us for a vote?
I think there has to be a second.
Yeah, so do we have to make a motion for the
Dr.
vote,
Medlin,
though?
second, okay?
Oh, Howard never had a second?
No.
Correct.
Okay, my apologies. Now I move for nominations. No, that's not right. That's not the way it works, but that's okay.
Right, 'cause
Okay,
nominations should
So
be
Howard,
for the-
Howard made a motion,
Yeah.
someone needs to make a second. That's all we need to do
Call for a
here.
vote.
All right, so now we'll take a vote. Yes?
Yeah.
Mr. Marshall?
Aye.
Dr. Metcalf?
Aye.
Dr. Medlin? Aye. Ms. Lessentine?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Next, we need to elect a secretary for this Board of Finance meeting.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Marshall.
Now we'll take a vote. Ms. Lessentine?
Aye.
Dr. Medlin? Aye. Dr. Metcalf?
Aye.
And I am an aye also. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is something that Dr. Vrocko talked about last board meeting because of some discussion with the board regarding redevelopment commissions and their purpose and how our role is. So the first thing I'll ask that you turn to is a little packet that looks like this. I will say that all the slides and things in here I have taken from other presentations that I have received. I want to give credit to the DLGF, to Policy Analytics, Dr. Larry DeBoer. So I could have redone the material, but it's already there, so why reinvent the wheel? Okay, so let's just get a little bit overview of what a TIF district is. So a TIF district is when a city or town or the county designates an area that is usually underdeveloped or maybe run down, and the redevelopment commissions then want to develop it so that it brings more economic value to that area of the town. Sometimes areas just are not being developed naturally, and so there needs to be some sort of incentive in order to bring private businesses into that area. So what the municipality does is what they do is they create a TIF district, and within that district, the assessed value of the properties in that area are in essence frozen, and that's considered what's called the base. And then the redevelopment commission says, you know what? In order to entice this factory or this plant to come here, we are going to issue bonds, the city is, in this case, the redevelopment commissions, and they're going to sell bonds to put in the infrastructure. And maybe it's a 20-year repayment on the bonds. And so then the commission pays for all those infrastructure improvements. The facility, then they build the factory, they build whatever they want to do. And then instead of that once the structure is built, instead of all of that value coming onto the property tax rolls as assessed valuation, it only incrementally comes on. So in this example, if it was for 20 years, in essence, 1/20th of the new value of the property will be added each year incrementally. Only the property owner, the manufacturer, they are paying that increased property tax value slowly, and all that money goes to the commission, not to any of the other governmental units. So if there's a Tif district formed and the property value was $100 million, and now it's worth $1 billion, well, that's probably a bad example, but in that scenario, instead of that entire $1 billion being added to the tax rolls to raise the AV for everybody, only a small amount will. So where that can hurt some of the overlapping governmental units is we have less assessed value attributable to us, and therefore, when you divide the levy into the into the assessed value, it computes a higher rate. It is good, though. They are very good mechanisms in order to bring the development in, because incrementally over time, the value is going up. So the property tax dollars come to the redevelopment commission, and they take that money and they've used it to pay the bonds that they sold in order to put in the infrastructure. So it is a great funding mechanism. The first couple slides kind of explain how they work. Now the Tif district and the bonds can be for, in a sense, any length of time that they choose. Now there are some statutory limitations on that now, but it could be 25 years, it could be 15 years, it could be 10 years. It's whatever the commission decides. How much of the investment is it going to take to put in, and how long do we want it to take in order to repay the amount? Where some of the issues have come up is, we'll say the commission issues the debt and they have to pay $400,000 a year to make the debt payments, but the new revenue is bringing in $500,000, $600,000, $800,000 a year. They have additional revenue that has come in that is more than exceeding what they need to pay out for repay the debt. So the question is, what do they do with that money? Well, they have multiple choices. They can give it out to some of the other taxing units who have been shorted on it. They could release some of the assessed value by saying, hey, we're collecting too much. We're going to spread that AV back out so other units can get it. Or they can just keep the money and say, you know what? We need some sort of insurance here, because what if the developer doesn't make a tax payment? We still need to have money in reserve to make the bond payment. So it is a little bit of I don't want to say a catch-22. It is good to have reserves. They can also use that reserve extra money to do further infrastructures in the future. So if you're more of a visual person, if you kind of go to this page, it kind of shows kind of what I explained, that if in the existing tax payments, you kind of had the one building there, and the structure pays taxes, and it goes to the county, the city, the schools, and everybody else. Then the commission creates the TIF area, which has the base AV. The city sells the bonds, puts in the infrastructure for the bonding, and then the new property tax dollars from the new development go only to the commission, not to anybody else, and they use that to pay the bonds. If you look at the graph that kind of shows the upward kind of chart, it shows that how that incremental value is going to the commission. What happens, though, is if it was a 20-year bond for that particular project, that assessed value does not come to the other taxing units until that 20 years is over. So that's how, on this chart, it shows that that blue area for us, any development in that TIF district isn't coming out to RAV until down the road after the bonds are paid for. So it is a great way to bring the redevelopment in. The question just is sometimes, what does the length need to be? How much does the commission want to contribute to the financing of a project? It really, everyone has to, each one has to be taken into consideration on their own, and that's why, since we have an indirect effect on what gets developed or how RAV affects RAV, is why the state has placed school board members on that commission currently as a non-voting member, but there's been a push to make school board members a voting member in recent times. So the last couple pages, the one thing I kind of made a chart here of the top part is the taxing units that are in our district. We all think of just St. John, Dyer, and Schererville, but there is the unincorporated St. John Township, as we know. There's a little part of Griffith, there's a little part of Crown Point, there's a little part of St. John Township that has St. John Water, but you can see the difference between what the full value of the AV is and then how much of it is what we get to use as the net because of how much of it is in the TIF. And you'll see that Schererville and Dyer currently have a large amount of assessed value in the TIF district, which is fine. I will say the St. John amount of 44 million is currently lower, but I think it was in 2014, 2016, the town of St. John designated the entire 41 corridor from where Strax and Target is, from there all the way down to 231, and then east on 231 toward the gates as an entire TIF district. So any new development that goes in there is going to increase the AV, but we won't see it until the time those come off. So that 4% of the St. John AV is low now, but as more development continues down 41, that will rise. So that was a little bit controversial, and I'm not saying it was right or wrong, but for example, there's been a lot of development between, 93rd and where Strax is. So one argument was this area is naturally developing already. Do we need to create a TIF district in order to bring in more because it seems like the developers are already coming naturally? Should we pay for the incentive and take this AV away from everybody else? I'm not going to say it's right or wrong. I think redevelopment is good. The bottom half just kind of shows what our current tax rate is. For 2021, we are going to be at just under 84 cents. And I just kind of threw a demonstration out there is if we had the full assessed value of all the value in the TIF for our same levy, our same need, our tax rate would have been about 4.5 cents less at 79 cents. It will never be that way because it is it's a good development tool. So just kind of in summary, it's good that we're represented because the state realizes that schools have an impact, so they put it in code that school board members should be part of there. I think the questions that we can ask or you can ask when you're on the commissions is, all right, is it necessary to create this district or is it happening already naturally? What is the term? Should it be 20 years? Should it be 10 years? Should it be 8 years? How long do we want it to do that? The annual revenue that they get in, how much of that extra amount needs to be necessary to hold on to the commission? Can it be released out to the underlying taxing districts? So it's always something to think for. As I said at the bottom, when they're used well, it pays for the infrastructure on its own, and it's really no cost, not as much cost to the taxpayers because the developer is paying for the bonds. But when used too much, it could hurt the other overlapping school districts. So And then ironically, over the weekend, I mean, I don't know if I put this in your packet or not, I saw a story in the Times that in Michigan City, there's plans for some condominiums to be put on right on the lake, right by Franklin Street. And sure enough, it's talking about Tif District and how they're going to create a TIF, and that it's expected to be a $20 million project and 25-year bonds. And so in essence, if the commission is going to decide, hey, are we going to front the entire cost of this project? And if that was the case, then, you know, general math, like $800,000 a year would be coming back onto the rolls over that 25-year period, or that would be in lieu of the entire $20-some million coming out at once. So, and they say in here that it's no risk to the city because in essence they sell the bonds, they put in the stuff, and they're going to get the property tax dollars every year to repay those bonds. So it's no cost to the taxpayer. So it is a real life example just over this past weekend there. So it's kind of complicated. It's really good for development.
Yeah, it is.
But just something for us to keep a watchful eye on, since it affects not only our rate, but the library's rate and the township's rate, and so much as well. So, any questions on that exciting topic?
I have a question.
Yep.
Have we ever received money? Or has anything ever been released to the taxing districts?
Not that I'm aware of. Nothing directly, like none of the towns have ever sent us money directly and said, here, we have extra proceeds, here's some for you. Whether or not they've released some of the assessed valuation back into the tax rolls early, that I don't know.
But you always send them a letter asking them if
They
have
they
extra-
send us a letter annually, each of the commissions does, to in essence state that there won't be any excess revenues in order to distribute. And you know, and that's fine. Again, they need to have extra. That is their right to keep it. I'm not going to judge and say they shouldn't.
When is that letter usually sent to you? End of the year, middle?
That's-
Thank you.
We'll get an example from the file.
Thank you.
Again, like I said, if they had extra dollars on hand and they wanted to reallocate those for other purposes in the town, then they don't have to go and tax the taxpayers for it. So there is an argument for them to keep it as well. So,
Very good.
any other questions on that?
Mr. James, thank
Yes.
you for the list of questions we should ask, because that's very helpful.
Okay.
to
Well, no
know
problem.
what
If
to
you
look
want
for, so-
clarification on any of those, you know, feel free to ask me, or I'll chime in. So, okay. Now actually part to what's required by code. So, starting in 2020, last year, well, let me back up. In 2019, there was legislation passed, maybe even back in 2018 at this point, for the state to develop what's called the Fiscal and Qualitative Indicators Committee. And it's in essence in order to keep an eye on school districts to do good reporting to their respective boards. And that way, Joe Public and the board and anyone else can see the financial health of any school district in the state. There's a website where all this information is at. So this committee was put together and they started coming up like, what are some of the key factors that are affecting a school district's finances and how can they be measured into a way that would be universal for all school districts. And the committee originally did a lot of work. They started with like probably 50 different factors, and I think last year they got it down to 9. And so last year at this time, I gave a report on these 8 or 9 different factors. Well, there's been a little bit of change to the committee. Currently, well, the committee is made up of one person representing the DUAB, the Distressed Unit Assessment Appeals Board, and then there's a person from the Department of Ed, one from the State Budget Agency, one from the State Board of Accounts, one from the DLGF, and then someone from IASBO. Yours truly was asked to be the state rep for Indiana ASBO this year. Our prior rep had to, for other reasons, went off the commission. So I jumped in this fall to kind of massage the indicators to see, which ones weren't really that good after presenting them last year, and what kind of changes can we make. So we worked hard on the committee, and so now, as required by law, we're just going to kind of go over the report for Lake Central and go through each of the different factors. So here you have those, and then I have kind of just like my notes on a separate sheet that you can kind of follow along on. So the first indicator kind of shows our ADM count. This is our student count. This is the basis for our funding. And you can see that from 2012 through 2020, fiscal year 2021, we've been pretty consistent. I think we had a high of just over 9,600 kids in 2012, but we've been around the 9,400 mark, rather consistent as we reported here in the fall. This year, we were down about 250 kids to 9,166, mainly because of our kindergartner numbers this year were much less than what they normally are, attributable to the pandemic, So we're hoping lots of those kids, our numbers come back up next year. We won't ever get this money back that we lost because of having the lower enrollment, but I'm really hoping those numbers do come back. And just to know that this number reflects all kids, regardless if they're e-learners or in person. So, the issue is that when we're getting around $6,000 per kid and we're down 250, that's about $1.5 million less in revenue this year than we were getting last year, just because of the student drop. So it is what it is, but we have reserves and we are able to manage that for this year. On the second page, we have the fund balance report, and what this does is it kind of shows what the cash balance of all of our funds, and when they add it together, what they are. And what a negative indicator or red flag here would be is if you're starting to see a downward trend, if you have a really low cash balances. From this graph, you can see that we've been around the 27, 28, $30 million mark rather consistently. We had a dip in 2017, and that was mainly because state revenues, we were giving pay raises to our staff very consistently, but the state revenues that we were getting were not keeping up with the amount that we were giving to our staff members. And so that's why our cash balance went down a little bit. In 2018, that came back up because of state revenues being increased in the state funding formula from the General Assembly. And in 2019 is when we started to receive referendum money. So that is why our fund balance as of December 31st, 19 is higher than in other years. In essence, we've had, in 2019, we had a full year of referendum money come in, but we only started spending that money in September with the new teacher contracts for the 1920 school year. So therefore, we've really had 4 months worth of expenditures, a year of revenue, so that kind of skews the numbers up a bit. The next chart is the annual deficit and surplus of our funds. So that graph shows how much revenue we had come in, how much expenditures, and then the subsequent plus minus there in the yellow. For the most part, we're running well. We have run with a surplus. I just want to explain to the board again why some of these numbers get skewed, especially in years like 2014, 2015, and 2017. So this is just a straight how much money came in, how much money went out. So as we kind of talked about in an email earlier, sometimes the board will issue general obligation bonds, but we'd spend that over 2 or 3 years. So we issued bonds in 2012, we issued bonds in 2016, we issued bonds again in 2019. So like in 2016, we had revenue come in for the bonds, and then we spent spent that money in 17. So in 17, we had no money come in, but we had all the expenditures. So it kind of skews the numbers and makes it look as if we spent more than we had coming in, but really we didn't. And in 13 and 14, we still had some construction money running through here from the big referendum project. So therefore, again, that money all came in 13. We were spending it in 14 and 15. Again, it looks as if those numbers are that we operated in a deficit for that time frame, but we really didn't. And then another piece is our pension bonds that were done way back in 2004. So each time a veteran teacher retires, we pay their severance out of the pension bonds. Well, those pension bonds, that money came in, again, 16 years ago. All we do is pay out of the fund. There's never any money that comes in anymore. So therefore, just looking at that fund, it's always going to be running in the red. So, but overall, you can see if you're looking across, we really try to, honestly, we really try to run at the margin. We don't want a deficit spend, but on the flip side, we're not in the business to run a big surplus either. We're getting money from the state, getting money from the taxpayers to spend money on these kids and this staff. So we try to run as close to that zero line as possible. So, any questions so far? Okay. The next one is fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. You've heard me talk over the years that we try to be in that 10 to 12% range of what our cash balance is as compared to all of our expenditures. And we, for the most part, we have been running in there. We've started to dip in 17 and 18. Again, with the operating referendum money coming in, now that has increased our balances. But as I said earlier, that 2019 number is a little high because we got a lot of referendum money. We got a full year of referendum money in 19, but we hadn't started to expend all of it yet. So we had more cash on hand. The next indicator just shows revenue by type. This kind of just shows the difference between how much of our revenue is from federal sources, our state grants, just other local money, and then local tax revenue. As you can see, most of our revenue is from the state, either through the funding formula or through our state grants. And on the last page, this indicator just kind of shows what percentage of our operating costs come from referendum dollars and how, how addicted to the money we are. And so here in 2019, it shows that we had a little bit over, we had about $8.5 million come in, and per their calculation, that was about 6% of our total expenditures. But I think that number is a little skewed because this shows all of our revenue. This is including food service, textbooks, construction, grants, common school loans, debt service. None of that stuff, those things all go for a specific purpose. And so if you're just talking about our regular operating funds, being our education fund and our operations fund and our referendum fund, our budget for those is around $86 million total, and you're going to see that here in another moment. So really, our percentage of the referendum money is about 10% of our operating cost. So it's higher than the 6. It's around 10%, and we're very fortunate that we have that money from our taxpayers on that. So again, I try to go through those a little quicker, probably not as quick as many people hope, but I will just say overall, we are in good shape. We have healthy reserves. It's important for us to spend the money we get from our taxpayers and spend it wisely. But just, coming up, things that we're dealing with now is, this is a budget session. We'll be determining our funding for the next 2 years. The original forecast, revenue forecast from the state that was released in December didn't look as bad as many of us were expecting, but we take that with a grain of salt. The real revenue forecast that the legislators will be working from to finalize the budget comes out in April. So that's the important one. The governor has come out last week with his funding proposals for I believe it was a 2% and a 1% increase to education. That's just his proposal. That really, it doesn't mean anything at this point. It goes to the different sides of the General Assembly, and they will hash that out over the next 4 months. But regardless, we're not talking about 3, 4, 5%. The General Assembly did a really good job last, 2 years ago of putting more money into K-12. Most of us in my shoes are hoping we'll be flat, or thinking we'll be flatlined. If we can get more, that's great. It's more money that we can put into our teachers' pockets. Other things that we're facing is insurance costs. Our insurance costs are going up about 15% this year, which is pretty significant. This is like just our regular property and liability insurance. That's going to cost us about $75,000. This is not a reflection on us at all. It is just the insurance world as a whole, that the insurance companies have been hit hard in the last year or two with fires, hurricanes, riots, and they've got to make up their costs. I've always said the insurance business is a great business because anytime you lose 1 year, all you do is raise the rates the following year and you make it up. So we and most of my peers are all in the same boat, that we're all seeing rates increase, and it's not a reflection of anything we're doing here, and it's just how the market is. So
And what did you say the increase was?
we're looking around 14 or 15%.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And then I already talked about the ADM is down for this year, and so, but again, we're doing okay. So, any questions on that aspect? No? Okay. Next thing I just want to go through is what we kind of try to do on a quarterly basis, and that's kind of go through our cash flows of how our funds are operating. So I have 2 sheets in front of you, which both represent calendar year 2020. If you look at the top, the first one I'm going to go through first is, if you look on the top left, it says Education Fund, 2020 cash, or calendar year cash flow education fund. So this is just our education fund. This is our money we get from the state. If you look there across, we had about $62 million of total revenue, of which, about 60, you add the first 3 lines together, over 60 million of that is our state support from the school funding formula. And then down below, you'll see where how those expenditures went between the certified staff, classified staff, and all the different benefits. You will see where we show there, toward about 2/3 of the way down, is our transfers to the operations fund. As we recall, once the school finance changed 2 years ago, we take a portion of the school funding that we get into the education fund and have to transfer that into our operations fund. There's been a big push to keep that percentage under 15% from the General Assembly and from the state. There's more guidelines now that if you exceed that 15%, you're going to have to go through multiple steps and have hearings and file reports. If you look at the top, toward the top right corner, you'll see that our percentage for calendar year 2020 was about 9.1%. So we're not even close to that 15. We manage our operations fund well, and this way we can keep more money here in the education fund and gear it toward staff and student services. So if you look to the bottom right-hand corner, that's where most people usually jump to, is, okay, how do we operate for the year? We overspent by about $300,000, but in the scheme of 62 million, we were pretty close. And this was a year of much unanticipated expenditures than what we originally had, specifically, more staff to implement the e-learning program, which, we weren't expecting, but that was that. So any questions on that page before and I know there's a lot of stuff on here, so and if you ever want to reach out to me later and ask specific questions, feel free. But because the way school finance works now, there's so much intertwining between the funds. Just really looking at a snapshot of the education fund really doesn't tell the full story of a district. So for us, it's important to look at not only the education fund, but our operations fund, our referendum money, and then any reserves we have in the rainy day fund. So this next page kind of shows, okay, well, if we combined all four of those funds together, how are we doing? So the items that were on the first page are also on the second page, but then a lot more. And you'll see for this year, if you go down to that straight bottom right-hand corner, we operated about $4 million to the good. That seems very high, but it was, again, it's because of the way we're using the referendum money and slowly being able to add that to teacher salaries and not spending it all at once, because then if you spend it all at once, now you're back running at the margin again for the next 6-7 years. So we are adding the staff and being able to give pay raises, I'll say incrementally, but in order to do that. One thing I'll bring your attention to is on the revenue side, about 4 lines down, you'll see interest earned, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But we were earning about $20,000 of interest a month there in January and February, and then COVID hit and the pandemic hit, and now we're down to about $2,000 a month. So our interest earned drops significantly. We're going to go through that again on my investment report, but that was one of the things that really jumped out. So overall, we're running very well. We're healthy. We have good reserves, and we're in good shape. So do you have any general questions on that as of right now?
No, nice report.
Okay.
Nice report, thank you.
All right. Okay. So now we'll just turn to what was in your board packet, and as part of the Board of Finance attachments, the next thing we had to talk about is a report on our investments. You know, because of our cash flow, we don't have large investments out there, and we don't have any investments like in CDs. We tied up. We have it all in the bank because it's liquid and we're spending our money. We have money being swept into money markets, earning interest. So the report, the first part is how much interest we've earned. So this kind of correlates also to that last sheet. But in 2020, we earned $76,046 in interest, 76,000 and change. In 2019, we earned $302,000. So you can just see, just because of the pandemic, knowing how the banks work, you know, we saw a big dip in interest back in 2009, 2010 with the recession. It's going to take a while for it to get back up. But our local banks have been really good about when their rates go up, they pass that down to us as well. So the next item is the board has to annually adopt an investment policy resolution. I've included that in your packet, and this resolution just mirrors Indiana code about what we're allowed to invest in. And again, all we do are just have money market sweep accounts. So I present the investment policy resolution for your consideration.
Move to approve?
We have a motion by Ms. Lessentine. Do we have a second?
I'd like to second that.
We have a second by Dr. Malkow. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. And then my final item is to approve the list of old outstanding checks that were included in your board packet. And Indiana code says that any check outstanding for more than 2 years after December 31st, in which the year it was issued, can be canceled and voided back in. So we've put a list of those checks in your board packet. I seek your approval to have those receipted back into the fund they were drawn upon. And just to clarify, if one of these vendors or someone comes to us a year from now and says, hey, I found this check, we would gladly reissue it to them. So it hardly ever happens, but just to let you know that we're good customers like that. So I seek your approval on the disposition of those old checks.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second?
second by Ms. Lessentine. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, motion passes.
I make a
That is
motion
the
to
end
adjourn
of
the
our
Board of
finance meeting.
All right, we have a motion to adjourn.
Second?
We have a second by Dr. Medlin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, same sign? Hearing none, We'll move on to our agenda, approval, deletions, additions. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you. You have a revised board agenda before you, and it does have an additional item under my section for a professional leave to attend a virtual conference with the school superintendent's group. We're going to hear from new Secretary of Education, Katie Jenner, for the first time. And then also there's an addition under Mrs. Mooch's personnel, an updated packet at your workstation. Thank you.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall,
Second.
second by Dr. Medlin. Any questions, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you. Is there any correspondence this evening, Mr. Marshall?
I have none, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move on to our liaison committee appointments. At the last meeting, we did not assign those, so tonight we do need to get those assigned. And do we want to go through them individually, or do we just want to assign what we've been on and then assign Dr. Medlin to the Dyer Redevelopment Committee?
I think in light of the time of the meeting so far, that's what I'd recommend, just go with what we had, and if there's changes that need to be made, we could do that later.
All right, do we have,
The only recommendation I was going to say is if Dr. Melvin wanted to do Wellness Committee, since I'm already on 2 committees, she's more than welcome. Otherwise, I will stay on that committee, either way. Don't have to make a decision right now.
I'll be on the Wellness Committee.
all right,
That's fine.
so that change will be Dr. Medlin, and I'm sorry, is that you, Dr. Malkow? Are you on the Wellness Committee also?
Just as a backup for Mrs. Lesentine.
Okay, so
So
you'll
be
be
Jenny and-
the first? in-
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion by Dr. Malkow. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lesentine. Any questions, discussion?
Can I just say
Hearing-
one really quick thing? Okay, so at the last meeting, I was talking about an idea of having stakeholder forums where a board member would essentially sponsor the idea of stakeholder forums, and I checked with the ISBA, and actually that is not legal. A single board member cannot be in charge of forums in that way, and those types of forums really happen when you're developing a strategic plan. That's usually when you go to the community and get community ideas, or when you go to the staff and the teachers to get ideas for a strategic plan. So that idea is off the table. I just wanted to make mention of that because I brought it up last meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? All, we're all assigned to our committees then. Thank you. So now we'll move on to our official school board business
Can I
topic.
just talk about Lake Central Education
Oh.
Foundation?
I'm sorry. Sure.
The grants go out next Monday, so teachers, if you're listening and you'd like to submit a grant to Lake Central Education Foundation, those grants go out next Monday, which is, I believe, the 25th. Also with the Legislative Committee, I believe if you're following what Terry Spradlin sends out to us from ISBA, we're monitoring House Bill 1005, which expands that education savings account. We knew that would come back around again. And was there another one? I think that was the main one at this point in time. And Mr. Slager is here, so if you have any questions after, maybe he'll be around and you could talk to him.
I apologize. Does anybody else have anything they want to share for their committees? All right. So now we'll move on to our official school board business topics, consent agenda. Dr. Veraco.
Thank you. Seek board approval for the minutes from our executive session and our regular board meetings on January 4th, and seek board approval for the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures that you received in your packets.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Ms. Lesentine,
I'd like to second that.
second by Dr. Malkow. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. There are no public comments on our action items, so we'll move right on to our official school board business topics, regular agenda. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you. Our first item is to recognize an outstanding middle school student from Clark for a junior all-state band. I know Mr. Walton from Clark Band is here tonight, so I'd ask him to come forward to help with that recognition. And Mark, if you'd use the microphone there so the people at home can hear. Thank you.
Hello, thank you for your time. I'll make this brief. Our student Alex Magaha was selected for the second year consecutively to the Junior All-State Band. That is like I said, all-state band. It's junior only in the spec that only applies to middle schoolers. And the Indiana Bandmasters Association defines that as 7th through 9th grade. So the fact that he made it last year in 7th grade was truly remarkable. This year in 8th grade, he actually went further and was selected as the #1 overall percussion student. And so we are obviously very proud of him. Of note, that's the first time we've had somebody from Clark, we're a younger school, so it's the first time we've had somebody from Clark selected as the first chair player. So that was very exciting as well. So we're recognizing him and his efforts tonight, and also recognizing his private lessons instructors. Alex has studied over the course of his 2 years with Patrick Speranza is his current teacher, but he's also studied with with Josiah Rushing. We're going to be sending a certificate of appreciation to Josiah Rushing. It's kind of interesting. He's graduating Marine boot camp this Friday, and he's going to be playing in one of the Marine bands and representing our country that way. So we're obviously very grateful to Josiah, not only for his service to our country, but also teaching Alex the last couple of years. So Alex, would you like to come on up?
Wait, Alex, tell us, what instrument? I mean, what's your forte?
Percussion.
Are you do
Percussion.
all of them, or you specialize in
I play pretty much all
the
percussion
snare drums?
instruments.
You do the chimes and the marimbas and everything?
I play everything. Everything's my favorite. I can't pick any favorite. If it's a drum or something I hit, I love it.
Good for you.
And who did you bring with
Yeah,
you
who'd you bring
today?
with you?
Can you introduce who you brought with you?
I brought my mother, my father, and my sister, and I would like to thank my mother and my father for always pushing me to do my best.
So Alex, and you can play the marimbas or with the double ballads and all that good stuff, and
Yep.
wow, cool. Do you play piano also, a keyboard?
I've messed around with piano a little bit, but I never really got into it that much.
It's very, very nice, very nice achievement.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Absolutely, congratulations.
Thank you.
Alex, is your sister following in your steps? No, we're trying to get her.
Alex, when did you start playing?
About 4 years ago.
Wow.
Wow,
Tremendous.
that's amazing.
Very nice. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Congratulations.
Yeah,
Great things for you.
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything more exciting than to hear a percussion line. Is there? Percussion lines are just so
Right,
cool.
right, yeah.
Can he leave?
Yes. Alex and family, we're going to continue with our board meeting. If you want to stick around, you can, but if you want to leave, you're more than welcome to do so.
You guys can all.
Good for him.
Okay, at our last meeting, we were asked to have an item regarding public relations staff position. And so I would turn it over to Dr. Malco for some opening comments on, and for our benefit at, with our central office team, what are those particular things that either Dr. Malco or any other board member would like to see more of, so we can start to dig into this topic deeper.
Well, and the reason I bring up public relations is because of the importance, I believe, of people in the community to know the good things that are happening. So I'm talking about beyond the school community. I'm talking about the actual Tri-Town and St. John Township community. We are privileged to know a lot of things that happen because we're on the school board. But if you're not on the school board, I wouldn't know what was going on. Now, maybe some of you would know what was going on and student achievements had been earned because of having a student, say in the high school or at Bibbage or at one of the schools, so you read it in the information that comes out. And we don't all receive all those newsletters. So that's my issue, and I just want to celebrate the good things we do. For example, like last time when we nominated, and I believe it's in your newsletter that you sent out, that I read this afternoon, the book award. So to somehow get that information out to our community, older people like me and people that are older than me that can sit there and say, wow, they're really doing a great job. Now, Brenna, is that right, Brenna? Yes. Brenna, after I asked that at the last board meeting, she reached out to me, and I believe I forwarded it to all the board members because she explained what was already in place at Lake Central. Most of it seems to be driven, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenna, by technology, correct?
Yeah, it's very heavily technology focused, but if we were to want something else, I would be more than willing to sit down and talk to you and see if we could figure out.
Okay. I mean, I don't know how you want to move forward, Dr. Bracco, but if she's willing to volunteer, I think there you've got your person right there. I mean, I always have ideas floating through my mind, just like the young man that we recognized tonight that needs to get out there to the community. I believe that we've had Business Professionals of America that have done really well and maybe got first or second at the Nationals, but we never knew about it. That type of stuff is what we need to celebrate. Bibbage got first place.
Well, I think it depends on whether you're interested in ramping up the electronic delivery of content via, Facebook and Twitter and all those sorts of options, or if you're thinking about an older traditional mailing where people who have an address in Tri-Town get copies of things. When we started doing this again about 5 years ago, when Dr. Emmerich was here, it was about $125,000 a year to print something nice on decent stock and then bulk mail it to the residents of Tri-Town. And we didn't have any money then, so that was off the table. But if that is where you're going, because I know there are still some school communities who do that. They want the people who don't have kids, which, let's be honest, it's near 70% for us, to get it in a form that they can look at it, and that would be in their mailbox. And I know my own mom down in Lafayette saves what she gets from their district, so I can look at it for ideas too. So that if you're talking about reaching the senior citizens, that seems to be one of the better ways to do it. But there's a hefty price tag to it because we've got a big community with 3 towns in the unincorporated area.
We do. You're right. The one thing that we could do is minimize, so it's the newsletter that you sent out today was multiple pages. So we could condense that so it's maybe just a front and a back, have an eye-catching name to it. And I don't know if it all needs to be in color, quite honestly. I think black and white with a splash of color is quite appropriate. Those are just my thoughts. I don't think that most people my age, I don't Twitter or tweet or whatever you call it. I don't know if most people do, so I don't know that stuff that's going on. I don't even get the Lake Central Facebook notifications that Brenna mentioned. So I don't know. I don't know how to move forward with it. I know what I would want to do, but that's just me, so.
But to go back to the content that you want to share, it's really back to celebrating the successes
Absolutely.
of all students,
Absolutely.
pre-K through 12
Absolutely.
in the district. But
Absolutely.
you're thinking of targeting those people who otherwise don't get to see the content.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I know that I reached out to Melissa Reddick because I noticed that a couple of the high schools had some of their finalists for academic awards, and I can't think of the name of them. And I said, did we not have any, Melissa, or what happened? She said, Janice, I try to get it to the newspapers and it just doesn't happen. So our students were not recognized, but they're out there. We know they are.
Well, and you can't count on the papers because they're running a business. So even sometimes when they've asked us to contribute content, by the time they had a spot in the right section, it was a dated piece and then still never
Right.
ran. So you do have to sort of rely on yourself to push it out.
Right.
But if you stuck to a periodic piece, for us with our corporation newsletter only going out 4 times a year, we feel that all 10 schools have to have representation in that document. That's why it's generally 8 or 10 pages anyway. And then we have some contributions from different people with things that we think apply to everyone. And so those items end up in that newsletter. And most of the ones I've seen from our region and the one that Lafayette puts out, it's about the same, if not longer, but they're only doing it, 2, 3, 4 times a year.
Oh,
And but you make sure that children of all levels are represented there.
yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I think we can do that. And you can always also have banners in those hard copies that try to drive the people who are willing, because even my mother, she's 90, she has an iPad. She doesn't use it that much, but if we tell her to use it, she will. And if you see something and you wanted to start following something more closely, you could. It's not that tricky of a skill to figure out. So let us go back and look at some numbers. Any other comments before?
Brenna has something to say.
Well, you know what, it's a good beginning, and that's how we start. We just start, and then we modify it and adjust it to make it even better. I was going to tell you, I think there is a publication that comes out to every home, and it's for elderly people. And on the front of it today, it had about the Munster firefighters collecting X number of dollars. That could have been out of Lake Central, but I don't know the name of the paper, but. Okay, so how do you want to move forward?
Well, let us put some thoughts on paper, and we'll revisit this at a future meeting soon. Yeah. For my next item, I'm just going to send you my notes from the legislative update. There obviously are no bills passing yet. There's a lot of speculation out there. In the interest of time, I'll forward that to you this evening so you can review it at your leisure. And we will do an official update at our next meeting. And then my final item this evening is just to seek approval for the expenditure to sit in virtually on the winter meeting that has a couple of interesting topics. The most interesting, of course, is Katie Jenner's presentation to us about the direction she wants to see the Indiana Department of Education go. and she is the keynote there on January 29th.
We have a motion by Dr. Malkow. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lessentine. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Now we will move on to our Director of Human Resources Personnel, Mrs. Mucha.
I'm wondering if it would be okay if I jump ahead and have Chris do his presentation since he has another place he has to be soon. So is it okay if we go to 6 and then we'll go back?
We'll move on to...
Mr. Enyard.
Mr. Enyard.
Thank you, Ms. Mucha. We were guessing on a time. We're kind of doing a release of the football coach that's going to be approved hopefully tonight here shortly. We were guessing 8:30 and we guessed wrong. So we invited parents and media to the gym at 8:30. So
Okay.
at your table, you had a packet of information for our fall sports seasons. On the second page, what you have is our total numbers of participants. This year we had 133 girls, which was up 2 from the year before, and a total of 254 boys participating, and that was an increase of 19 students. So we had a total increase of 21 students from 2019, which was interesting. I mean, I knew that all along, seeing the numbers come in, that we were up, but with COVID, there was a lot of speculation of how many people would actually participate, and it was interesting that we did go up again. Of those 387 student athletes, 149 of them received the Scholar Athlete, which means they had a 3.66 GPA or higher, so 38.5% of our student athletes maintain that GPA. And I always get the question, cheers always counted in the winter. They cheer in the fall and the winter, and we put their information in the winter packets. Duneland Athletic Conference, girls for cross country finished 3rd, golf finished 2nd, soccer 4th, and volleyball tied for 3rd. And the boys side, cross country finished 2nd, football was 8th, soccer was 4th, and tennis was 5th. The next page just talks about our postseason results. Girls cross country, they were sectional and regional champions, and they advanced to the state finals as a team. Girls golf finished 2nd at sectionals and 4th at regional. That's one place off of qualifying for the state tournament this year. Girls soccer lost in the first round of sectionals. Girls volleyball also lost in the first round of sectionals. Boys cross country were sectional champions, and I forgot to delete that. Or no, they advanced to the state finals. So they were one of the top 4 teams in this regional and semi-state and kept qualifying. Football, they lost in the sectionals. Boys soccer lost in the sectional championship, and boys tennis lost in the sectional semifinals. The one thing I do want to highlight, until volleyball sectionals, we did not have to shut down an entire program in the fall due to any COVID outbreak within the teams. And unfortunately, that bug hit us the morning of volleyball sectionals, and we were able to put a team together that consisted of 10 freshmen, 2 sophomores, and a junior and a senior. And we went to play that night to represent Lake Central and play, and we actually won the first match and lost the second 38-36, and then fell in 4. So it was tough. That's a tough conversation to have with kids when you know it's the last game that they could have ever played potentially. So the next 4 pages, I did add the 2019 report just so you can see its comparison. As expected, with the restrictions that were placed upon us, we saw a decrease in everything across the board. Gate receipts were down almost $13,000. Advertising, I gave the option to all of our corporate sponsors to have this year for free. Most of them are small businesses, and we felt with the way the spring went and how things were shut down through most of the summer that it was just a good gesture, and we had one company that kept continuing, and the rest accept that offer. And again, that's, what we wanted to do. Season passes, we usually make about $16,000 in season passes. We didn't sell any season passes because when we started, we didn't know what the seasons were going to look like, and they're still changing. So we have not sold any season passes this year. Fall teams, fundraisers and fees. We did not do any fundraising. Again, with all the hits to our community, we didn't want to tax them again. And we moved all of our team gear and everything online. instead of collecting all the money, and that's about $100,000 that we usually see in fundraising and fees that we end up spending back out every year. So we did have some people donate some money to the programs, and those were accepted as we went along. Concessions were about a little over $6,000. That's down about almost $3,200 on the year. And then we had the athletic golf outing. That's what we used to cover the $30 of the $60 participation fee. And again, due to COVID, we canceled that. The year before that raised a little over $30,000 for the athletic department that we used to give back to our kids and programs. So in total, this year, our income for the fall was $72,916. And compared to 2019, that's almost $160,000 less than we brought in 2019. But again, most of that comes in fees and fundraising. So if you go to the couple pages past where the expenses are, we've been able to take care from the athletic department, a lot of teams. We take care of all the needs and we take care of a lot of the wants. That's how I put it to my coaches. And this year, we all got used to saying, I got used to saying no, and they got used to taking it because we just didn't have the money to put out there because we had to cut back everywhere because we knew we were going to have shortcomings. So the game workers and officials, that was $20,000. Officials accounted for about 11,000 of that. Those prices don't change. As far as officials, we cut back on a lot of game workers just to try to make some ends meet. Field equipment and facility maintenance, we spent about $30,000. A big chunk of that is our reconditioning for football helmets and equipment and new purchases there. As stated, the gear and fee, we didn't do any of that. We didn't collect it. It was all done online, so they would do it through the online store, so that it was shipped there. Training and weight room was about $10,000. The corporation transportation fee, that's $30. Our parents paid, and it's all on Skyward. Concessions, expenditures were $5,000. So really, if you look at concessions, we made about a little over $6,000, and we spent $5,000. So we made about $1,100 in concessions. Miscellaneous, that's all the awards, anything you can think of, all the extra stuff that we have to purchase to make the year go, office supplies and everything. That was about $17,000. Hospitality and banquet, we saved a lot there because we didn't do any of it other than waters and some pops in the refrigerator for our workers. So we were able to decrease our expenses by almost $145,000. So again, a lot of that's from the team gear. And winter, where we're at right now, with the even more strict guidelines, we're losing anywhere from $200 to $400 per contest. We have enough in our rainy day fund. We haven't had to touch it. We already had enough reserves built up that we were able to sustain it. My guess is if the trend continues, probably halfway through the spring is when I'll have to touch into our savings account to start to pay the bills for officials and everything else. So that's my guess. Any questions on the board, on the report?
I have a question. It's not on the report, but did any of our high school seniors that graduated last year, did any of them sign to go to universities? Because I missed that.
We have not. We had to postpone our signing day. We do a big event. We released it on through our social media page and put it on the athletic website on that signing day of what we had. And we're hoping things continue, or we can improve to a point where we can recognize them all officially and do our big signing day event here in the spring. So we had about 13 that we were aware of at that time.
That signed.
Yeah, that have signed at various levels, correct.
Okay. So that might be something, right, there's a public relations tidbit that would be nice to get out to people. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And the last thing,
Oh.
okay.
And a smack and he's gone. Okay. I'm asking you to recommend the following personnel, classified and certified, be approved.
we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept that personnel recommendation.
I'll second that motion.
We had a motion by Ms. Lessentine, I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't even hear her.
Yes, and then a second.
We're so far apart, we
Okay,
can't hear each
We
other.
have a motion by Dr. Malkow and a second by Mr. Marshall. Any questions, discussions? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. I would like to take this opportunity. We do happen to have our new football coach and math teacher with us this evening,
Oh, cool.
Mr. Rick Good.
Hey.
And now you have to go.
Terry, just a quick comment. If I could speak for the entire board, welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, very excited. Yeah. All right, cool.
Okay.
Keep
They're a
moving.
tougher crowd.
Keep moving.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, Mr. Good. For my second item, you'll see in your packet that I suggested some of the following employee groups get a $3 raise. Certainly, as we raised other people 50 cents, it started to get kind of close to these people, and we want our substitutes with various licenses to show how much we appreciate them. So I am asking for a $3 daily rate increase. This would have started with the last pay period, which was last Wednesday, and it'll be reflected on their February 5th paycheck.
We have a motion by Ms. Lessentine,
Second.
second by
Aye.
Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you very much. For your information in your packet, I also have the conflict of interest disclosure statement with just those 4 people listed for this year. The next item I wanted to present was the high school summer school courses that Mr. Beck prepared for us. It is not a lot different than what we had last year, but it opens fairly soon with the DOE to put in our bid for monies for that. So Mr. Beck had this prepared just for your information. And the last thing that I want to say is a good news piece. We have partnered with the Food Bank of Northwest Indiana, and we are going to be distributing food for our communities here at Lake Central High School. Dr. Veraco and I met with their representative, and on February 15th, from 12 to 2, we're going to be in the soccer field parking lot, and they'll have the food all boxed and ready to go, and they're anticipating about 100 families to come in. They're asking us to consider doing it about 4 times a year. When we do it, that happens to be President's Day, so the kids aren't in school. But if we do it on the days the kids are in school, we would change those hours so it wouldn't interfere with the kids, leaving school. I've asked and just briefly mentioned it to our administrators. They have asked us to have 6 volunteers, and we already have 11. Wow. So our administrators are all in and ready to help distribute it. We are thrilled to be a part to help any of our families in the community who need help, who are not doing so well. So
Are there any requirements for that?
there are not.
So just anyone in our community can.
The first 100 people that come
The
get
first
boxes. These boxes will feed a family for approximately 4 to 7 days. So it is a good amount of food. It varies each time, of course, but we are thrilled to be helping our community and doing those positive things that Lake Central is famous for.
Terry,
Yes.
I missed, who's the partnership with?
Food Bank of Northwest Indiana.
Food Bank of Northwest Indiana. Okay.
Did you say it's the first 100 families?
This time they are anticipating about 100 families. They think once we get going and it becomes a spot that the people are used to coming to, we could be up to 150 families.
But there's not a limit on it, in other words.
The first 100 people get the food.
Oh, there is a limit on it, okay. Shoot. And I wanted to share with you that there's a local church that would like to do the food bags, the buddy bags, where they pack them up for the kids to take home on the weekends. So I will have that person reach out to you, see what you think about that. They do all the work.
Same as the food bank. They have it all boxed and ready
Yeah.
for us. So
So this
and
is for
also
those-
one of our SROs, Nick Staymate, is going to come help us with traffic So
Yeah.
they
So-
were very excited that Lake Central wants to have them come.
Will they do that during the summer, do you know?
She said approximately 4 times a year, so I'm thinking once a season
Okay.
perhaps.
So did our children during Christmas break, did they have any food opportunities?
Well, the food bank goes year-round,
And the
and the St. John Township, yes.
and the Dyer Methodist Church and Faith Church. But we didn't do anything locally like we did in the past, correct?
We don't serve during breaks, food during breaks.
No, no, I know that. No, but remember when we were out last time, you were doing the giveaways down at the St. John VFW. I just didn't know if that happened again.
I'm not sure.
No, that did not happen, but that was food that we'd already purchased, and so we were pushing that out.
Right.
With our partnership with VFW, because
Okay.
the food that we were pushing out, we didn't feel would hold until August.
That was the food that we would have had the kids eat between March and May.
That from the federal government is based on our level of free use during the breaks, we don't distribute food.
And so right now they are,
Not prohibition, it's just a guideline.
and right now they're feeding everyone again, correct? The government, the federal?
Correct.
It's a breakfast and a lunch.
Lunch.
To the end of the school year, right? Or until funds?
Say it's over.
Right, okay.
Okay, what, okay. Thank you.
Thank
That's
you.
cool.
Thank you. Move on to our Director of Primary Education, Mrs. Schoen.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval of the professional leave request that was included in your packet.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you. And for my last item, you recalled that at the last school board meeting, I shared the number of students that wanted to switch either from e-learning back to in-person or in-person to e-learning. And tonight, I wanted to share the specific class sizes. There was a chart, or actually 2 charts in your board packet. The first one, which is the shorter one, is the e-learning class sizes. And by looking at that, you can see that we had to move 5 teachers back to in-person learning to accommodate the larger numbers of students that wanted to come back to in-person. Overall, our e-learning class sizes are great. The smaller class sizes are wonderful for that e-learning format, especially for our primary students, because they struggle a little bit with that online learning. If you look at the other chart, which is our in-person class sizes, you will see that in general, class sizes did go up, even with us adding those 5 teachers back in. When we were moving students around, our goal was to accommodate everyone who requested the move, but also to disrupt as few students as possible in the process of moving around. Accomplishing that means that class sizes can't be balanced easily. If we did that, we would be moving students and disrupting their lives a little bit more than we wanted to. So given the constraints and just all of the struggles that we've had this year, class sizes are really in line with what we would expect or what during a non-pandemic school year. There are a few that we're looking at. Bibbich, 2nd grade is pushing the limits, and Coling 4th grade is getting up there. So those are 2 that we are keeping our eyes on. Any questions?
No, I mean, that 4th grade at Coling caught my attention for sure. So glad you're watching that. That's good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to our Director of Secondary Education, Mrs. Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking your approval for the professional leave requests that were in your packet.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Malkow, second? Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Dr. Medlin. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign? Motion passes.
Thank you. For my next item, I just wanted to give the board and any community members that may be watching an update on state testing. We had been hopeful that the state would have suspended testing for this school year. They gave us a waiver back in the spring when the schools were shut down, and that hasn't happened yet. Based on comments from the governor and some of our Republican representatives that are on the education committee, they feel that the state test is still necessary because they want to see what skills our students may be lower in due to the pandemic, and also to get a baseline for growth in future years, feeling that some students have fallen behind. If the state test in Indiana had a better track record, I could possibly understand this logic. But as we've shared with the board before, in 3 of the past 6 years, we have been unable to use the state test data due to flaws in the assessment or due to flaws in the data analysis itself. And so it doesn't seem wise for us to be putting a lot of stock in what is proven to be a very flawed assessment. Our teachers see day in and day out how our students are performing. They can gather that data from our local assessments and from their classroom grades. They also are assessing where our kids are at socially and emotionally, and that is what's going to help guide us in understanding which of our students are struggling and also what we need to remediate in the time we have left this school year and in the years to come. The other problem that comes with state testing is, of course, this year has been very difficult, and whenever we have high stakes testing going on, it takes up a lot of instructional time. For example, we have testing of our ELL students going on right now with the WIDA assessment. In February, we have to test all of the juniors at the high school. In March, we have to test all of the 3rd graders at all of the elementary schools. And then heading into April, we test all of our 3rd through 8th grade students with the iLearn assessment. It takes a great deal of instructional time, and any extra time we can get this year is greatly appreciated. It also causes a lot of anxiety for many of our students taking those tests that we don't need during an already stressful school year. So what we did was we sent out information to the teachers, to the administrators, and to you as board members last week about who to contact. We're recommending Governor Holcomb's office, the State Board of Education, Bob Baining, who's one of the chairs of the Education Committee, as well as any other representatives who might be willing to listen, to please cancel state testing for this school year. That is our ideal. We just don't see the benefit in it, especially given some of the issues that we've had with state testing in previous school years. At the very least, though, we need the General Assembly to hold schools harmless. What that means is that they will not count, hopefully, the state test data in our school report cards. There actually have been statements made by our elected officials that seem to support this, and so we're hopeful that it gets passed, but we do want to bring it to their attention. We get graded on our academic performance, which we anticipate being lower due to the pandemic across the board for all schools, but also based on our participation. So in Lake Central alone, we shared with you last week that about 25% of our students are doing e-learning. And that means we would have to require all those students to come in for testing because the state will not allow us to proctor it remotely. Some of those families have made the choice to do e-learning because they have significantly more health risks in their home, and they don't want to risk exposure to COVID, and I don't believe with the way the vaccine rollout is going that we'll have any high rate of vaccination going on where they might feel comfortable. If you fall more than 5% of your students not participating in an assessment, then you actually get dinged on the state report card as well. They're looking at your academic performance, your growth across school years, which we won't have because we didn't take the test last year, and then also your level of participation. Given what we're up against, again, we're hoping that they will just waive the state assessments completely. But at the very least, we need our community to please reach out to our representatives, explain the situation, and hopefully advocate on the school's behalf, not just for Lake Central, but for all of our schools, that this is not what's in the best interest of our students. Any questions?
No, and I think what you sent us had a nice little summary. You kind of gave us all those details, didn't you?
I did, and if
Okay.
you need any others, please let me know.
I have a couple questions. For our local assessments, are they common assessments across the board? So like all 3rd grade classes are taking the same Unit 1 math test or English test?
Yes.
So middle school as well. So that's all been fixed. If we go across the middle schools, they're all taking the same curriculum and the same assessments?
So at the middle and the high school level, they have a base set of questions they pull from, and then teachers do have some autonomy to add additional questions to those assessments if they wish, based on some of the things that they may have studied in class, based on the needs of their students and things that they're trying to measure. But yes, there's a base for them to pull from.
Okay. And we have those for all subjects across the board, every grade level?
We have them for the core academics, so math, social studies, science, and language arts.
So we could see a report then on the difference in the local, we could see basically data on local assessments, since you can't give us state assessments. We could start seeing data on those to see the comparison across the district?
We haven't tasked the teachers with putting that in a database. They enter that into their Skyward gradebook. So that would take time for us to put together those reports, because that isn't something that we've asked of our teaching staff.
Okay. If they're common assessments, are they being done on some sort of a common platform then, like Mastery Manager or something like that, where it can
No.
be pulled?
We've looked into Mastery Connect before, but at the time we couldn't finance it. With the switch to e-learning this year, there probably is more usage of Canvas, which would allow us to possibly pull some of that data, but in previous years, there wouldn't be any data to pull from. And I'll just be honest, I don't want to ask one more thing from my teachers this school year.
No, I wouldn't either. I would expect that if we have common assessments, we have some way to collect that data, or we need to get a way to collect that data. If we have the common assessments, then we have a technology department that I feel that should be working on that then and pulling that together so we can compare data across. The common assessments do us no good if we can't pull the data, and that's not on you. I know and I would never want that to be on teachers, but we should have ways to build those systems to be able to collect that and compare across the board would be my suggestion. My question, if we just say we're not state testing and we get nicked on the report card, what really happens to us? I'm just curious.
I've never tried it.
I'm just saying, I mean, and I hate to be the buck here, but I'm going to say it out loud, y'all, I am. If the state is not going to listen to what's going on, I would be curious to find out what happens to us as a school and a district if we just say, you know what, y'all, we got enough going on here. We need our kids to be healthy and emotionally and socially, like you said. I agree with you 100%. I'm just curious, what truly, do we lose funding? Do we? You would lose funding on that? Okay.
We're doing the beta testing for ELL students right now.
Yes.
And our funding for both Title III and SFP would be in jeopardy.
Okay, and that's why I was curious. I figured they tied it in somehow. I just wasn't real sure if, like, we just kind of push it to the side.
It is a very tempting thought, I will agree.
Correct,
with you.
right, and that's why I said, I had to ask. I had to ask, sorry, I did. And then I'm sure that our failure rates are higher. I hate to talk failure because that's negative end instead of passing rates. I'm sure that it's higher. It's the same across the whole nation. Where are we kind of at with it? Do you know how much we dipped or
So
what we're doing to help those
I don't
students,
have
I
a
guess?
specific number. I can say that at the high school, for example, looking at our Algebra 1 class, knowing that that's such a big foundation for everything else that's to come in their high school career, we've been working with our math department chair, Val Gardner, and Mr. Bagley to put together a plan for those students who failed the course to go back and try to remediate different segments, identifying which chapter or unit they struggled on. Thankfully, we've had some of our math teachers be willing to assist us with using the PTE time that's already built into the schedule to target those groups of students. The problem is there's just so many of them that we're trying to figure out, looking at the group that just fell below the passing level, who with some remediation have the greatest chance of having those skills. The students who we've had trouble getting work from and things like that. And again, there's a lot going on right now, so I'm not judging in any way, shape, or form.
No.
Those students are going to need to repeat, so that's going to impact our master schedule significantly the following school year.
Did we offer anything, for example, at our school, we offered repeat algebra or first semester algebra 1, second semester. We did some finagling in our schedule. Are we doing anything like that where kids are repeating first semester classes second semester?
Yes, we're looking at all of those options.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So Sarah, then all that data that Sandy was just referencing would eventually go into that data dashboard?
If we
Built
could
into
purchase a
that?
program such as Mastery Connect, get the teachers trained on it, then yes, those kinds of programs do allow the data to go into a central location, but there is cost involved with programs like that. I would never expect the tech department to build out something that there already are some pretty good vendors for, and I've looked at districts that have utilized it, but it just is an additional expenditure.
so the technology software we use now can't do that? Can't organize that data?
It might be able to in Canvas. We'd have to dig into it a bit more. In the past, some of our teachers were hesitant to put assessments on Canvas out of the fear of cheating and other things that could take place in the online platform. With the Mastery Connect, the students have different ways of tracking the data. There's sheets that you literally scan. As they turn it in, it gives the data, and then it brings it into a bigger warehouse for you to look at from a building and a district level. So that's a benefit above and beyond, I think, what even Canvas can do.
And that's through,
The software program that I looked at a couple of years ago was called Mastery Connect. And you put your assessments in, and then it will process all the data for you to get that local assessment information.
it's a lot of data, I know, with a lot of kids to deal with.
Yeah.
You know.
If you can just let us know if there's any other, software company, I don't know which ones you have already checked into, but that might be something, especially with the state tests being so far off. I would like to be able to show the state, look, you want us to give these tests, but here we have data showing our assessments are valid, they are showing growth, things like that, and maybe that can then balance out some of those other tests.
So there is talk in the new accountability models that they're looking at the state level for sort of what we already showed you a couple board meetings ago, a district dashboard, where you could highlight some of those things. A lot of them are end of their time in K-12 education type things like your AP assessments, your PSAT data, and things like that. I think if it was an assessment worth teaching towards, that had some reliability and validity like a PSAT or an NWEA, it would be much easier to swallow the thought of doing state testing. Just with our current system, there's too many flaws for it to really be useful data, so I put the kids through it, especially this year of all years. And then my last item is to bring up Mr. Smith from the high school marching band to give you guys a presentation about our program.
Will you be doing,
Good evening. We're
Presented?
prepared to present if you'd like, but I put a packet on each of your workstations. If you'd like to do that, or if you'd like to present up there, we're prepared to do either.
This is easier.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Well, good evening,
Hi.
members of the board.
Good
Thank
evening.
you for having us here. I'm Mr. Begley, and with me tonight is Mr. Smith. Dr. Rocco asked that we put together an information brief for you, the board, and for the public to kind of talk about the status of our bands. And it is a program that we're very proud of. It has a long, storied history here at Lake Central. I've always called them the hardest working kids. If you ever go out on a hot July day and see some kids dedicating a lot of time to a great effort, it's our band students. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Mr. Smith, kind of talk about the people, and I'm going to kind of talk about my job as an administrator is to get hurdles out of his way so he can function. So we'll kind of talk about how we're kind of working the program and our plan to seek continued improvement.
Yeah, one of the things Mr. Begley just mentioned, I mean, just a program with such history and success. I mean, if you look even at the second slide, consistently at our state level, in ISMA, which is the State-Sponsored Music Association, consistent gold ratings in every activity that they have available. Concert groups, jazz ensembles, marching band, solo and ensemble contests. I mean, always at top marks across the board. Numerous state finals appearances with the marching band, Bands of America Grand Nationals, semifinalists through there. We've had concert performances in Toronto and DC. We performed at Disney. I mean, the experience that the students get with 4 years of band is honestly phenomenal. That's kind of one of the things I look at as the band director. What kind of experience are we going to have? I mean, the opportunity to perform in front of thousands, tens of thousands of spectators across the country is, I mean, something I don't take lightly, and I know our students, our band students, don't take lightly. For me, what are we looking at for the next 4 years? What would, say, a freshman coming in next year, what would a 4-year look like? If they are a marching band person, it's, as of right now, looking like the ISMA competitive season will be back, and same with the Bands of America competitive season will be back. They did not have that this past fall. That was a big hit to us without a performance outlet of that kind of stature that we're used to. So that'll be back in 2021. In 2022, taking a group to the Smoky Mountain Music Festival for a competitive aspect, but you're also working with collegiate level professors who are working with you, clinicking you right after you perform. The following school year, continuing with the things that the students love, and every band student, marching band student will tell you they want to do BOA. It's the experience, it's being there. When you walk out on the field in Lucas Oil Stadium, it's just amazing. You're stepping.
What is BOA?
BOA, typically the Grand Nationals take place in Indianapolis.
Okay.
At Lucas Oil Stadium. They do have regional.
Band of America,
Band
thank
of
you.
America.
Okay.
So,
We talk acronyms.
yeah, a lot of acronyms, yeah. And then, in 2022, fall 22, looking to do the Philadelphia Thanksgiving Day Parade. And that, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people are going to be witnessing us, march down the street and watching on TV. In the spring, there's a wonderful concert band festival over in Chicago. It's actually at Hersey High School, just north, one of the north suburbs. And then, WGI, which is kind of the Winter Guard, well, it stands for Winter Guard International. Their winter competitions for our guard, our percussion, our newly appointed winter winds. The marching band continues. And then looking to, more of a national concert band festival. They do host one in Indianapolis. It's run by the same people who run Bands of America marching band competition. Or looking at, performances in DC. We've also talked about New York as well. And, just the opportunity to perform, to compete, because there are students who love the competition, but most importantly, the experiences that they're going to get, marching in parades, performing in concert halls, performing for, band students across the country.
And when we met, we're trying to balance a financially affordable experience, but a first-class experience, because, and then I always say, you never remember the day you learned how to graph a parabola, but you remember that trip you took to BOA and the friendships you had, and these are long-lasting friendships that these kids get to have. Now, of course, they remember how to graph a parabola.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. But those trips they get to do. So when we met, we kind of talked about, let's have one time in their 4 years they get to go on a big trip, and then the BOA, which is lucky, it's right in our backyard.
Sure.
So we don't get to sleep at home in our beds, but it's not going across the country as some of the bands have to do.
And an effort of not, taking too long. One of the, the concerns that has come up is just the numbers in the marching band. The marching band is a co-curricular activity. It is optional. They're not required to do marching band. And we've seen since 2016 a pretty big fluctuation up and down either way. And I look at 2017, why were we 200? We have no idea. It was just a thing. We tried to kind of pinpoint something, but it was, we thought we took a big trip that year. We thought it was a big trip.
Was it Disney that year?
It was Disney, but most of the kids signed up not because of Disney. Like, it was just, this is what we're going to do. This year in particular, it was really tough with the COVID restrictions. We had seen a 30% increase, which was really promising. We had, the previous fall, had invited all the middle schoolers out to a rehearsal. We had a little pizza party. We had been getting into the middle schools, and then March hit, and it became a challenge for everybody, on all fronts. So it was, I'm hoping we'll see that big bump again this coming fall. We'll start to get kind of those numbers creeping in. And I do think we'll see that. We've been in the middle schools this year, every middle school once a week. You can see, changes we made. Look, what can we do to help keep that number ticking up? Because really, we do, the experience when it's a larger group is exciting, and I know that, I get that. So getting to the middle schools once a week. We're even helping the e-learners in the middle school band. That's been a big thing as well, just to assist the middle school directors is that, teaching a sixth grader how to play any instrument over Google Meet might be one of the hardest things. And then, keeping the experiences the kids love, Mr. Begley hit on it, making sure they get that opportunity to go to the Bands of America Grand Nationals, taking trips to Disney periodically, going to all these other music festivals around the country, to get that first class experience. One of the tough things, though, it is a numbers and a financial thing. Marching band, and I don't know if you've been to a marching band competition recently, but it is a very, very, very expensive activity, and especially to do at a level we try to compete at. Our marching band fee in 2019 was $750, and that is expensive. But in comparison to a lot of schools that we compete against, in Class A, they'd be considered like 5A schools as well. Carmel, they charge $1,800 to participate in marching band. Avon is very similar. There's some other bands that are probably more in our world, but they're charging $1,000. And being in a Bands of America event, we're not just competing with Indiana. We're competing with everyone, and you're looking at groups that can and decide to charge $2,500 to compete. Now, and with that, if you're looking at Grand National finalist bands, every single band that made finals had a budget from student fees alone of over $500,000.
And that's just something where
It's just like a
It-
mental
it's-
note.
it's tough to get my head around that, where I want to make sure that it's accessible to all our students, and I don't want to price kids out of it.
And that, not taking into effect booster fundraising as well. There are bands that have budgets that are in the $1 million to $1.5 million, which, I don't know if that's...
Can make it prohibitive.
That makes it a little bit, yeah. And you may be asking, well, why do we need to charge this much? Where does it come from? What goes into designing a marching band show? There's, right there, drill design. Most people are paying around $10,000 to $20,000, but there are groups in our state that pay upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 for the drill design, basically how the students move on the field. You're looking at roughly another 10, probably a little bit more, again, for some of these other places, for music design, the writing, the arranging that you're doing for these shows. You have to pay for copyrights. You can't just take the music and run with it and do what you want to do. That is, on average, around $2,000. I do know groups, again, there are people that pay way more than that. Tech staff, you not only are you paying to develop the show and design the show, you got to teach the show too, and most people, $25,000, but again, you're looking at, in our world, you're kind of comparing apples and oranges, because some people are spending $150,000 on their staffing. Travel and transportation. If you are going to these Bands of America events or invitationals or things, around $10,000. At most Grand National events, you typically have to make an overnight event, so you have travel expenses that go with that. The housing, which is roughly $8,000. You have to go through the Housing Bureau to do that through Music for All, which is the company that runs the Bands of America events. We want to feed the children. They got to eat. They tend to eat a lot at this age, roughly 9. And then you have the entry fees to the contests. On the low end of that, that's $75,000. That was our budget for the 2019 season. And it's not just, we're going to take 2 weeks and do this. This is a year-round event activity. You're planning even before you're done. like you've already started,
Yeah.
you know, making sure you have your people lined up using, you know, making sure they haven't decided to go somewhere else. You know, in the initial planning stages, and you're planning all the way up until July and August when you're starting to learn. And even at that point, you're starting to adjust and change because you actually see it. It's one thing to see it on paper or in a computer simulation. It's another thing to actually get the kids to start doing it.
And
So,
you're
I mean,
thinking about that a year, because you're already been talking
Oh, yeah,
about
you know, it's, what, January 19th, we've been working on.
I get to
This
talk to
fall
him
show.
about this often, and the people that design the show, that $10,000 to $40,000, you want to find someone who's good at designing a show. It's not easy to do. Someone's thinking about this in his mind, so they're trying to get a person to design a show years in advance. And not only there's the kind of financial piece, it's a huge logistical move to get all that people and stuff, because we're talking, we have our own semi-trailer that we're utilizing to move the sets, the instruments, and then we have to move the students and the uniforms down there. So it's a big move.
So Elliot, did you have a show designed for last year and then COVID hit?
And yes,
So you had put the money into it? So would you be allowed to use that for the,
we are going to be using part of it for
Oh, okay.
this upcoming season. To, again, help, you know, kind of aim to keep those costs down a little bit. It's just, you know, it's a wonderful activity, and we love to compete at a high level, but at a certain point, it just, I think it becomes not educational when you're charging upwards of $2,000 to participate in a curricular activity.
It's a philosophical thing. I don't want to see kids priced out of marching band.
well, so that always brings me to the question, you know, is marching band worth it? All the money that you have to put in it? It's a
You
very
know, I would say our
expensive-
band boosters does an excellent job.
It's
of-
very
of
expensive.
helping
Can they
support.
learn just as much from concert band or symphonic band?
I-
I mean, I've always just toyed with that
I do
question.
think it's worth it. I think what comes with that, though, is the realistic expectations that come with, you know, what are you willing to do and what are you willing to spend? I mean, if
Yeah,
you
I
said-
think there's a balance. I think we're in a healthy balance of performing at a high level and not, I mean, I was at BOA and one of the teams had a Teflon ice skating rink in the show where someone was figure skating to the music.
They get-
And you know, that's how complex these shows can be. And it's, you know, you can spend that amount of money, but like, and Mr. Spith and I always kind of agreed on this, is like what's educational and what's kind of going over the board and getting a little bit too expensive.
But in terms of marching band too, like if you're a really fantastic tuba player, you could get a college scholarship if you've been in a marching band as a tuba player. So if you cut out marching band, then you're cutting out opportunities. You know, as a flute player, you can maybe be in an ensemble or something like that, but somebody who's like a tuba player might not have those kind of opportunities.
That's a good point, Jennifer.
Yeah.
And many of our students have gone on to colleges and done great things.
I have two recent graduates who are playing in the concert groups at Purdue, studying neurobiology. I mean, you know, it's the thing I stress to students is that, you know, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be done in high school. There's especially at a college, there's so many opportunities for you to keep playing and keep playing. It doesn't need to be an all or nothing thing.
And these students not only excel in marching band, they excel in the classroom too. These are some hardworking students.
Upwards of 90% of our students in our top concert group, the Wind Ensemble, are taking multiple AP courses and just doing a phenomenal job and balancing everything with that, you know, the other extra activities that they do. You know, I'm going to kind of put her, I mean, Brenna is one of our band students. She was at winter percussion rehearsal with me right before we came here, so, and she's here doing this. And you know, just the balancing that they kind of develop, the balancing act that they can do, the time management and everything that goes with it is you know, is priceless in my opinion.
So when we look at the staffing, kind of giving you a compared to where we are, as of last count, we are at 3273 students. This is the bottom of page 5. And we have 2 directors plus a color guard director. When you kind of compare us to Center Grove and Penn, we're on the light side of our staffing. And then Avon is kind of a premier program. Carmel is, its own little city at 5414. So when you look at their numbers, we're doing it lights. We're pretty thin in the staffing piece.
What is the number of their people in their band instead of just their population? Like, how do they have twice as many kids in their band compared to us?
I'd have to look up those numbers.
I guess that'd be my question. I mean, I get
Roughly, Carmel has, you're looking at 500 kids in the band program, but roughly half of those students opt into marching band. They're very similar in our setup that it's not required for them to do. A large chunk of them do decide to do it. Avon and Penn, I mean, even Center Grove might have a few less than us in their total band program, but everybody's right. We have just, us personally, we have right over 250 between all the concert bands and the jazz ensembles and everything. So it's very comparable, except
But that's
maybe
half
Carmel.
compared to Carmel.
Well,
You
yeah.
said Carmel has 500. I mean,
Right.
that would make sense to me that they have double the staff of us if they have double the kids.
Right.
I mean, if we're, and 250 was back in 2017, right? Or is that current numbers?
That's current.
Okay.
So is this Penn, Harris, Madison when you say Penn?
In Mishawaka.
Okay. And then, do you have anything on Fort Wayne, like how their numbers go? Because they have some good marching bands over there, Fort Wayne, Northrop, and what's the other one?
Northrop is much smaller. Homestead's the
Homestead,
big one up there now. They
Homestead.
have 3 directors.
Do you have any information on them, how theirs compared to these?
Like
that
the
are
number
in
of directors that they have?
Yeah, just, yeah. 'cause-
Homestead has 3.
Who does?
Homestead.
Homestead
They
has
have
3. Are they about our size, or are they smaller?
I don't know this. Oh, the band size, they're a little bit larger.
School size, are they smaller?
That I do not know.
I could look that up and get that to you. Going to page 6 to kind of look at some of the things, the quick fixes we've done. The practice area on the northwest side of the campus, right by the baseball field, we've expanded, and that's bullet 2. We've improved that practice area by putting gates up for safety, kind of closing that off, and then we also put in a permanent practice tower. So, when Mr. Smith is going up there to direct it, he has a better vision, and Dr. Varacco helped with that. If you look at bullet point 1, that was another thing we talked with Dr. Varacco and got his permission to do. We want to be good neighbors. That metronome starts banging, but we were able to go a little later and go into the practice, onto the football field to practice, which is ultimately,
That's the ideal spot.
that's the ideal spot. That's what they're going to be, when they're down at Indy, that's what they're going to be performing on. So that's been a big help. And then we have been able to increase the budget for equipment and repair since 2001. We've moved it up to $20,000. But some of that equipment, that Mr. Smith can talk more about it, is getting pretty old. The timpanis, I know.
Most of the
They've been asking me for
percussion
new ones for about 10 years on that
one. It's going on 20 plus years of age and constant use, not like 20 years of sitting in a band room. It's been 20 years of on and off of a semi, 7 times a year, moving all over, well, and probably more if they're using it for winter percussion and things like that. So, I mean, they've taken a lot of abuse and just kind of starting to get beat up to the point where they're going to need to start being replaced, and instruments like that, marimbas, vibraphones, xylophones, things like that are upwards of $15,000+.
And how does that
apiece.
funding happen for band instruments? It kind of got kind of crazy, doesn't it get kind of
It's
difficult?
There's things that the boosters will make donations. to
Right, I
this,
remember
and then we'll
that.
accept those, and then from there we're able to.
Are we
purchase
allowed
them.
to take any? Purchase?
Is there a cycle like there is for the buses where we have the bus where they're replaced? Or don't we have that for instruments?
We try to get every little bit of life out of that thing. The timpanis are the ones that
No?
and kind of give a shout out to Mr. Smith. He gets that in there and he fixes those things, and he's kind of like a jack of all trades of putting that tuba or the timpani, or with our instruments that we loan out to the students. He's got those. He keeps it going. To kind of talk about some 3 things that we could continue to do. We're in bullet number 1, bottom slide of page 6. We are one of the last holdouts of schools that don't award PE credit for marching band. I think it's time that we look into that. When you look at a freshman student coming into high school, these students are going to, 5 classes right off the bat are going to be filled. They're going to have their math, their science, their social studies, their English, and their foreign language. If they don't get into PE and pool over the summer, then there's another one that's blocked up. And if they're taking AP Human Geography, that's a pretty tough class, they might want to have a study hall in there. You run out of room very quickly for our freshmen. And it's important that, 1, we recruit them at the middle school, but we have spaces for them. So I think it's important that our students know how to swim. So for the PE piece, I've been here since 2002, and I've watched, last year or 2 years ago, I brought them out ice cream. I felt so bad for them because those kids are out there marching, and they're working hard. I would feel very comfortable awarding a PE credit, and I think it's something that we should start having that discussion to see if that's something we can go to. And talk with Mr. Smith, that would greatly help open up and keep those numbers. And then with that first class experience where they're going to get to go great places over 4 years, we retain them in the band and keep those numbers up. The other piece we talked about, or number 2, when we came to the new building, one of the things was with rentals, it was just across the board. Everyone paid the same thing. And that has basically priced out the private tutors, the one-on-one lessons with our students. And if you remember back with Alex, they talked about the tutoring he was getting, the one-on-one tutoring he was getting with, is it Josh? That's,
Josiah.
Josiah is now playing or going out for the President's Own, the USC, the Marine Corps band. That's the quality of people that you can get working with our students, but we're pricing them out with the current policy that we have. So if we could review that policy, that would be a big help. Do you want to touch on that?
Exactly what you said. I mean, we have lost a few staff just for those reasons, and just being able to be outbid. The percussion staff in particular is very hard to retain and keep. We had somebody a couple years ago that was fantastic, went down to a school in Indy because he got offered $20,000 to teach just the fall, like just fall marching band. That's not including the winter stipends he would receive, or money he would receive for writing, or money he would receive for private lessons. Just not able, like if I was like, oh sure, we can do that, a regular fee for another student like skyrockets $200, $300 just to cover the fee for that one person. So
and I think if you look at bullet 3, that last point, when you start doing the financial analysis, we are already paying a percussionist to work with the marching band, and the middle schools are also paying a percussionist to work with their students. I think we're probably in the ballpark if we really crunch the numbers and say, hey, here's what we're already paying. And I know this is tough times since COVID, and Mr. James over there talking budget. But to start looking to see and having that conversation, if we could add a third person sometime down the road, and instead of doing a hodgepodge of paying people for coming in and working, if we had someone full-time on the staff that spent the day at each of the middle schools and 2 days here and was also a director, I think we would be in the ballpark money-wise, where we'd be a zero-sum gain towards the budget of the school.
In those numbers, it's roughly $43,000 between the high school in the 3 middle schools that we've been paying percussionists a year. So,
And if you look at the last page, page 7, top slide, you always got to have your wish list. It would be great to have a guard director.
yeah, full time. That's you're starting to see that more and more. If you, and for me, you know, we are a nationally recognized program, and sometimes I look to those programs outside, even Indiana, and what is happening there. Texas is a big place to look. They do a lot of things in the music departments very well, and they're starting to have full-time guard directors on staff that are paid by the school corporations. They teach guard during the day. They teach dance classes, and you know, they travel between the schools as well. Sometimes filling, you know, odds and ends spots throughout, but that person is on staff. They are covered fully, you know, and then just the increase in instrument budgets, replacement. As we said, a lot of these instruments that we have are just becoming extremely old, and there's a, you know, kind of the point of diminishing returns when you're starting to put more money into repairing the instrument year in, year out. That could just go, well, let's put that towards a new one. And we're going to be there soon with a lot of the brass instruments that we have, the marching instruments in particular, because they do take a beating because they're out there day in, day out. And then even the percussion equipment in particular, just, I mean, they're 20 years old. You know, Dave Nelson, when he was here, I think they picked them up his first year, which was right about 20 years ago.
Yeah, about the same time I got here.
How many students are there in the middle school and high school percussion program?
In the high school, we have roughly 50. I'd have to, you know, it's like, it might be 45. And then in the middle schools, I would need to ask the directors there.
And how about the kids?
Yeah.
What at Clark? Okay.
Band students.
As opposed to having one huge concert band, you've divided into 3 smaller ones then.
Right. Right, and basically also you want to make sure that the right students are in the right group for their ability level. You know,
So it's ability
Yeah.
based.
Yeah.
Oh.
So we have beginners in the beginning band, and symphonic band are some beginners. Concert band is more advanced, and the wind ensemble is our top advanced group. They're playing collegiate level literature, performing at just an extremely high level.
Okay, thank you. So perhaps it's time for you to think about a replacement plan for your instruments,
Well-
just 5 to 10 year replacement plan, huh? Or 10 to 20, or
Ma'am.
something. Yeah.
All right,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Elliot. Good luck.
Good luck.
Now we'll move on to our Director of Student Services, Mrs. Gramala.
Thank you. It's been a long night, and I don't have a particularly exciting topic to talk about. So there were some notes in your board packet, and I'm just going to summarize for us. So Lake Central has entered into an agreement with a lobbying firm based in Indianapolis. Several school districts from around the state are involved in this project. And it is to address some of the weaknesses and concerns we have with our current due process hearing officers and the whole procedure that's involved with our due process hearings. So let's see, what's the name of the firm? Kroger, Gardis, and Regis is the firm that's going to be representing us. Our financial input for the district will be capped at $1,000, so we will not exceed that. So the costs are shared by all the districts participating. And so what we're working towards is some changes in a budget bill that would allow the hearing officers to be shifted out of the Department of Education and into another area of the government, which would provide some more oversight for the hearing officers and also decrease the financial burden on school districts throughout that process. So just letting you know, I'll keep you posted. We're hoping that Mr. Slager will be a good advocate for us. Unfortunately, he left.
I know, I saw that.
Hours ago, probably.
Becky, if I can add a little bit of background here, the problems began when the state got rid of the Board of Special Ed Appeals. So when you had a Board of Special Ed Appeals, the structure was such that the people that were doing the hearings were experts in special ed. They weren't necessarily attorneys, but they knew the law as well as any attorney. And over the years, they shifted from using these special education experts to licensed attorneys who didn't always understand the law inside and out. And so some of the decisions that were coming down have been rather unfair towards the very school districts that are serving students. And our interest in this began a couple years ago. Last year, we went down to Indianapolis. Some of you remember that, and sat with Dr. McCormick and their staff attorney to explain just how we thought we were mistreated in the hearing. And so we continue to stay interested because we want a fairer approach. We're not interested in tipping the scale so that the schools get all the advantages. I think it's important when you have a mediator of any kind that they can point out to both parties what the strengths and weaknesses are of their arguments. But nonetheless, we want to be involved not just in this token gesture financially, but also to serve as witnesses should the need arise to go down there and try to make this a better system.
Right.
And so that's why we feel strongly about it. The system is not working nearly as well as it could. And now that we have somebody who came from that world of special ed willing to go down there and really fight for it, a person that we've heard present many times at conferences, we believe that he can get this done, and that's why we're really rather energized by the opportunity.
And Dr. Varacco's right. It's problematic for both parents who, there are certainly areas in the state, I like to think we're not one of them, where parents do need to have this process in place. And, we had a case, and this was when we were still involved with Munster, where our hearing officer was so inept that our own school attorney was educating her in the process about what should be happening. And the parent picked that up and said, why are you here if the school's attorney has to tell you everything you should be doing? So it's frustrating for both parties. And we're hopeful that, we believe with the new structure, with the new director and the changes they're making in the Department of Education, that this might be a good opportunity to get something done. So we're hopeful, and I will keep you posted.
So they will be solely focused on that?
Well, Yes, so
Okay.
the way the system works now is they're all independent contractors. So they might have, I'm working with a mediator now who has his own family law process, but he does this on the side. So they're not really invested in the system. They get a few hours of training every year, but they're not really, this isn't their full-time job.
No, what I was wanting to clarify is this organization, the lobbying agreement.
Yes.
Is just for the preparation and a new venue for the
It is
hearing
just
officers.
for this topic only.
So it would not be a way to handle that double payment for versus what?
No, we're
private
focusing
versus
solely
the-
on this topic. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Directors of Facilities, Mr. Ledyard.
Thank you, Mrs. Suze. I know it's been a long night, so I'll try to be brief. I just have one item, and that if you can find it amongst your handouts of all Rob's papers and the two presentations. Mine is just a single-page handout. Yes, Howard has it. It looks like this.
Oh, I see it, right here.
It's that time of year again where we issue the annual maintenance agreements throughout the corporation. I'll just kind of do some highlights. As I said, I know you guys have been here a long time this evening. Pretty much, it's the same it has been for the last several years, with the exception of we added 3 things to it this year. One item we added was for the high school auditorium. We are going to be doing some maintenance and cleaning on the black box and the high school auditorium dimmer lights and all the consoles. It's that time. It's been operating about 5 years, so it's time for that. So I talked with Mrs. Neff and talked to Associated Control and Design, so we added that to the item. Also, we added to HOH to do some maintenance on our domestic water softeners. We found this is going to be, I think, a cost savings in the end. The last year or so, we've had such maintenance because St. John's water is so hard and so bad. Right. We've had such problems, so we're trying to be a little preventive here. And so we've added this to our maintenance agreements as well. And then if you flip the page, as part of our optimization program that falls under this, we saved some money because Pfeiffer and Protzman, we've really gained some ground on those, and we've had Energy Star in both those schools. So we're taking that savings and we're going to attack Grimmer. We're going to add Grimmer to our list. As I told you at our last board meeting, we've nursing it along this winter with those valves. So we're going to address that next fall. And we're also going to, that's also probably, other than high school, that's our biggest energy consumption school because of the age, the antiquated equipment. So we're going to try to see if we can save some money there and try to get some things a little better online, and so even a wash with the savings on Pfeiffer and Protzman. I also wanted to bring to your attention, even during the pandemic of these hard times, if you notice there on the second to the last column on the right, that's pretty much the delta from last year to this year. And really, we had either stayed the same or had some savings or very little increases. The only increase that was significant, and it wasn't even that significant, but it was because everything else was a savings, was the upkeep of the soccer field and football practice field. And that's basically because in the last year of the pandemic there in the last 6 months, phosphates went up 23%. So even if you've got bags of fertilizer and stuff at your Home Depot or Menards, you can see the increase, and that's a big part of that upkeep. So because the fertilizer upcharge, those went up a little bit. And our partners, I call them that because these people have worked very hard and been with us for quite a while, and they recognize we're a school in hard times, and they've sharpened their pencil because they like working with us, and that goes from everybody from our staff, our maintenance staff, the teachers, the administrators, as well as you, because you guys get their payments, we process and prove things, and it's a great relationship. So just to kind of give you an idea of the total, if we did not add anything, the 4 items I added, the 3 items, we would have saved $20,000 from last year. If we just went from apples to apples, we would have had a $20,660 savings. So, and then 3 new items I added was $32,000. So you can see they've worked right along with us. So I'll take any questions now.
So I missed your explanation of Grimmer. You're adding some,
We're adding Grimmer to our
Okay.
optimization, as
Got
I
it.
said, because last board meeting, I told you, we're nursing the heating along because of those valves and everything. And so we're going to, since we have to do something there, we're going to add that to our optimization,
Okay.
try to save some money, because that's also our biggest energy consumption school, other than a high school. So we're going to see what we can do there to get some cost savings.
all right, very good. Thank you.
Better to be proactive than reactive.
Exactly, Howard.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
And last but not least, our Director of Business Services, Mr. James.
All right, thank you, School Board. My first item is just to give you an update on our tax collections. On December 22nd, all taxing units in Lake County received their final tax settlement. And for the 2020 year, we had a tax collection rate of 97.37%. So it is very good. It's slightly down. We're usually around the 98.5 mark, but we are still grateful for our taxpayers to make that payment. We know the pandemic has caused some financial hardships, not only for homeowners, but for business owners as well, who are all taxpayers as well. So still a good collection rate, and we're very thankful for that. And then my second item is to seek your approval for a transfer of textbook rental fees. We do this twice a year. In essence, a student's book bill is composed of two parts: the curricular materials and general fees. All the money goes into the textbook rental fund, but the general fees money, those expenditures come out of the education fund, and so we need to kind of move the money in order to follow where the expenditures are. So from July 1st through December 31st, we collected $143,750.61 of general fees, and so I'm seeking your permission to transfer that amount from the textbook rental fund to the education fund to correlate with those expenditures.
Move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Marshall and a second by Ms. Lessentine. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed, same sign? Motion passes. Thank you. All right, we do not have any public comments, so we'll start with board comments and consideration of future agenda items. And Ms. Lessentine, we'll start with you.
I would say that, first of all, there was a lot of great reports today, so thank you very much for all of you guys that reported out. We greatly appreciate that. I would say for the future, the strategic plan, I think that, Dr. Melvin sent a great email talking about that, and I think we really need to revisit that so that we have that going. Finding out about the failure rates, I know we don't like to talk about that, but just finding out where those numbers are and what we are doing to help those kids rather than throw them back into the system. And then just more talk on the local assessments. What can we do within our own departments if we don't have those pieces of technology right now? What can we do? Are there things we can do to show our community growth? So thank you all very much for your presentations tonight.
Dr. Medlin?
Thanks, everyone, for being so patient tonight. I have nothing to add other than I think it would be advantageous to talk about strategic plan.
Thank you. Dr. Malkow?
I had such a wonderful sight today, driving down 81st Avenue and seeing the POW MIA flag flying at Bibbage School. That means so much to our military people. So thank you to your Jill, the head custodian, for doing that. It's pretty impressive. And are we on a 10-day segregation? Like if I'm in close contact, is it 10 days we're doing now, or is it the 14 days? Because the state changed, right? The CDC? So they gave you an option, and we're staying with the 14-day? Okay, all right. And the only other thing is we have a mixed signal up here about the way officers are elected. So I did some research. Cindy calls for the officers to be nominated, and it could be 3 of us. They require no seconds. When Cindy repeats the names and then she decides that everybody has been given an opportunity to make their nominations, the nominations are closed, and they require a 2/3 vote. So we have some different philosophies, so I just thought I would.
Well, remember, there's a different policy when you're accepting floor nominations.
Dr. Varacco, can you use your microphone?
Excuse me?
When you're accepting floor nominations, like at a club, like the VFW, or I used to belong to the Knights of Columbus, you don't cut it off because you could have an unlimited number of people nominated.
Right.
Typically, historically, when you have a 5 or a 7-member panel, when there's a nomination and there's a second, the accepted order of carrying is the person who got the second, you vote. If the person doesn't get a majority, they wouldn't win anyway.
Correct.
The votes are going to fall.
Correct.
The way they're going to fall.
But when you tell people we're using the Roberts rules, we need to do that.
Well, I'm explaining to you that.
The
But
limits on
Larry,
that.
I guess my question would be then, so whoever shouts out first wins, is what you're saying in ours.
That's what happened, Larry. That's what
It's,
happened.
it's not what,
Let's just call it.
so, but what happened was that Howard made a nomination of Cindy, and Sandy made a nomination of you. And then Cindy was like, okay, now what do you do? Because Cindy wasn't sure what to do at that point. So we started over, Howard made the nomination, you seconded it, 3 people voted, it's done.
It's done.
It was done, but that's not the way it should have been, is my point. My
How-
point is, Cindy opens up the floor for nominations. Somebody nominates Cindy. I could nominate Howard. And then Cindy would say, are there any other nominations? Then we close the nominations. Then we vote. It doesn't always have to be just one person. And it's not always the first person who shouts out of the room at the
Two people
earliest.
were nominated.
Huh?
2 people were nominated. The nominations were taken.
But not following this procedure. So we only voted on one because we did the second.
But once
Jenny,
you have a
let's talk
majority.
out- let's- I know that, I know all that stuff. I'm just talking the procedure. Jenny, we can talk it afterwards.
No problem.
It's getting late.
Yep.
Mr. Marshall, do you have any comments tonight?
I'm going to defer any comments to a future meeting.
All right. I just have 2. Wishing the winter teams good luck as they go into their sectionals and their regionals. And I would just like to thank you to our teachers, our custodians, our bus drivers, secretaries, cafe, students getting us to this point in the school year, and wishing them the same success going into the second part of the school year, second semester. So with that, we'll turn it over to Dr. Varacco for future activities. All right.
Move for adjournment.
We have a motion.
Second.
And we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned. Thank you.